Cool. So, I am getting a, let's put us in gallery view so that I'm getting a longer call. I always have this. Good morning, wherever you are in the world on Thursday, to reflect on this week's lesson. So we have the beautiful, wonderful, magical money guru, if I can call you that, that's my words, Tonia G, who gave us a brilliant lesson earlier in the week, all about finding our flow with money. And she has set the exercise in her worksheet for us to look at what are the beliefs that we hold around money, what have we been conditioned with, what are those subconscious things that are going on for us, and helped us to dig deep into how do we flip that money script. So all of those unhelpful things that we have hit. And for this worksheet, I wrote down my own questions, and what we're going to do today, we're going to be sharing a little bit of mine and Tonia's own experiences of going through this, and we're going to be fielding your questions as well. So hi Maria, hi Danny. If you both have questions, this is a great time to post them. If anything came up for you during doing the worksheet, if you just have questions that are more money, personal, maybe just questions that you've now got sitting with you as a result of going through this exercise, get them down in the comments, and we will be picking up on those during tonight's session. But we thought where we would start was with a conversation Tonia and I just started, where she was telling me that even though she's a financial organizer and she's, you know, lives and breathes this stuff, she's still learning, right? So tell us a little bit about what you were just sharing with me before we came onto the live, Tonia.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about going over the sheet, and I said, yeah, it's great to do because I'm still using these sheets to review things that are going on in my life. I think the huge reveal when I work with people is that I'm not perfect. I don't have all of the answers. Yes, I'm a money expert, but I'm only a money expert because I allowed myself to mess up and I allow myself to have fun with money, and I just learn from it. And I know that that's a constant, I'll be learning the rest of my life because there's always a new level with it. And so it's just learning that there isn't ever this, oh, I know enough. It's part of like, no, is the humility behind it of just knowing like there isn't this place to achieve, but there's always a learning process when it comes to it. And I still go through my own money problems, especially when I'm trying to get to the next level of, you know, a threshold that I'm trying to get through. It's the same thing. And so just for people to realize like there is no getting it right or figuring it out, and that everyone makes mistakes, and the whole perfection thing, please let it go, because that's a false ideal and you'll be chasing it forever, because there isn't, you know, when it comes to that, it's all about making mistakes. And that's what I've, you know, found. And that's why I'm able to teach on it now, is because I just keep learning from it, and most likely from my, you know, triumphs, but also from my mistakes.
I think this is a big challenge for all of us in many areas of life, not just in money, that we make a mistake or we do something that doesn't live up to some ideal we have in our heads, and then we beat ourselves up for it. Can you give us is there anything you do to help you stay out of that mindset and get into the more, it's okay that I've made mistakes, and not be perfectionistic?
Yeah, this one is still one I have to practice daily. And part of what I do is like I have a whole morning routine that I do in order for me to stay grounded. When I find that I like set my day up, and I use essences is a lot of what I use to kind of help ground me, because my mind, like I said, you know, very logical person, and it goes a mile a minute. And sometimes I just need to like calm down. So I will have like essences that I use. Sometimes I'll use breath work to kind of slow my mind down when I realize like I'm in a panic, or if I realize that I'm getting angry or upset about something, I give myself a moment's pause because I'm like, okay, you're being way too serious. So, is it something that I'm meant to feel? And I don't like pushing down anger or pushing down my emotions. So I just kind of ask the question, like, am I making this a little bit more dramatic, or is this something I really need to know about? And then usually I'm being too serious, or I'm taking it too hard because there's an expectation or something I'm attaching to it. So it's almost like taking a pause just to ask that one question of like, what's behind this emotion and feeling, and then going for a walk or something and doing something to take me out of that mode. So either like a breath work or just something to reset that then just grounds me. Something that's grounding is usually what allows me to then just, third person it out and not be so serious about it if it's not meant to be.
Yeah, I think you've given about 10 different tips there. So I'm just going to like unpick it a little bit if that's
Yeah.
all right. So,
Yeah. Please.
there's obviously like a lot of mindfulness techniques that anyone can tap into. There's so much out there these days, right?
Yep.
Breath work, yeah, totally fine. Breath work is brilliant myself. Meditation as well. Not all meditations, not necessarily the visualization kind, but the ones that help you to actually just center in the self.
Yep.
Be really good. And I think you touched on a couple of other points around allowing yourself to feel what you feel. I think this is really big. So often our brain works a million miles an hour faster than we do, and it's quite hard to catch it sometimes, right?
Yep.
So just checking in with yourself and saying, hang on, what am I actually feeling? And try to describe it like way beyond mad, sad, and glad. See if you can put a little bit more depth to it, because I'm like the worst person for being like, I'm so frustrated right now. Frustration is a big transformational energy, but we keep stuck when we don't investigate it and dig a little deeper and say, well, why is that coming? What's behind it? What am I experiencing? Is that real, or is it perceived? Is it, is it something I need to pay attention to, or is it something that this is a pattern where I just get a bit triggered and wound up, right?
Yep, exactly. And the patterns are the big ones too. And there's so much that we could learn when we allow ourselves and accept that we could just let the emotions come up. Like that's what I feel that they're there for. They're just here to teach us something. So if we just allow them to teach, it just removes so much of expectation and everything else. And also when you talked about the meditation, the other thing that I found too is sometimes when my mind is going so quickly, like 1,000 times a minute, meditation does not work because it just keeps going. So I do call it like moving meditation, which is why walking I find is really great because it almost matches it. And then a serenity comes through because I'm moving along with it. And then it's like, oh, it's now quiet again. Sometimes the sitting down still for me can make it worse at times where I'm like, it's not stopping and I can't get through it. And then moving sometimes just kind of does that.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that myself as well. Having walked across Spain last summer, I did the Camino del Norte, which is 500 miles. I think it's about just under 900 kilometers for people that work in kilometers. It took me about 30 days, something like that. But what I can tell you is, I don't know what it is about walking, but if you have anything going on in your head that's big that you need to deal with, go walking. It naturally unfolds all the stuff for you. I don't know what it is, but amazing. I think it's a combination of breath, movement, and meditation, getting out of your normal environment. Like, I think it ticks so many boxes.
It has a trifecta to it, and you don't even have to think about it. You just do it and it kind of works. So it's like really easy, but does the job.
Absolutely. So we have a question from Maria, which is that she says she loved the work. She found it really insightful, and asks, are there any systems or softwares that you would recommend for managing money?
I do have a couple of them. Actually, I have to pull them up because I don't really use any myself personally, because anyone that I found didn't work. I mainly use spreadsheets because I feel like the softwares are very specific. They're just one way, and each of us have different characteristics and habits. And sometimes the software actually doesn't really work for what we need. So I actually find that spreadsheets are easier because you could just jot down the things. But what I can do is that I do have a couple that I've heard my clients use and they were helpful, and I have a document. So I could just drop them in after this of different ones that I know that my clients have used. And if they work, try them out. I know that I've had like mints I've used before. And so, like I said, I could drop them in because I don't know them off the top of my head, but I have a document with them listed down.
Sure. And we have another question as well, which is, by the way, yes, please do drop those into the group. I'll definitely take a look at them. And as you were talking, I was also thinking about, I don't know if anyone has HSBC as a bank. On mine, they've just brought out this brilliant feature, which essentially adds up your bills for you every month. So you don't even have to work it out. And it only does bills. It's just like really simple. And you just select it. They know what a bill is from your account, and then you can add ones in or drop ones out if it's like not a regular bill. And so it tells you how much money you're going to have left at the end of the month after your bills.
That's amazing.
It's so simple, but just knowing that figure every month is, I don't know, I think it's so easy to lose track of that and to not budget and not think things through, right? And I remembered in your lesson, one of the big things you said was know your numbers, right?
Yep.
Right. And particularly like I've just moved house, everything's changed. I usually know my numbers, and I was like, oh yeah, I haven't sat down and done that yet, especially with COVID. So this is a great time, I think, if you've been through any change, or even if you're just like getting used to a new normal in any way, shape or form, it's a great prompt to go check out your numbers if you don't know them. Can you just explain to the group what the numbers are that they need to kind of focus on?
Yeah. So when I do my expense breakdown with my clients, I break them down into 3 categories. And so it is our needs, our comforts, and our wants. And so your needs expenses are the things that you really can't live without. That's why your needs. So it would be your utilities, your rent, groceries is pretty much like, it's dramatic, but you would kind of die without them. Like without food, you cannot live. I mean, without the roof over your head, yes, you would be out on the street. So like really your needs being the specific numbers, and that's why your utilities. So anything associated with that. Next goes into what your comforts are. And your comforts are like your phone, the internet, subscriptions, all of these other things that you're spending on. And then it is our wants. And then this is where clothes come in and like hair and nails and everything else. And I think putting them in these categories, especially in a time of COVID, it's really helpful because it helps us to distinguish. We mistaken a lot of the times a want with a need and a comfort with a need. And I think COVID really just goes to show how simple, streamlined, how easily we can not spend money, right? Because if you can't go to the restaurants, we realize how much money we're spending on taxis and transportation. And so putting them in the categories makes it very easy when you're cleaning house, or if your income has changed, to know which things you might want to modify or maybe budget out so that you have the income that you need. So having these categories, I find, makes it really helpful to know, which item you might want to maybe not spend so much, so that you can, if you don't have money for your needs, which ones to use and not to use. And again, that puts you at choice. You don't feel so much of a victim to money because you're the one choosing. You're not like, oh, my income has me not doing this. When you know your numbers, you're the one saying, okay, I'm choosing not to, go get my hair cut every month. I'll go every other month and that'll save me. So it kind of puts you back into the driver's seat, but you can only do that when you know what your numbers are.
Absolutely. I think as well, one of the things that came through for me in doing the worksheet was, it always blows me away whenever I do my numbers and I look at what's the minimum I need to survive, right? And it is so little. Yep. It's so little. And yet we get so stressed out about how much are we earning. And, as you say, we do fritter our money away in so many different ways. And one of the challenges that I know several people in the group have mentioned to me, and we have it in a question here, is so people have talked about how they've not necessarily been great with money in the past. And they feel like, one person in particular said, I feel like I'm carrying guilt for past mistakes. How do you get past that?
Yeah, guilt and shame are the two ones that usually always come up when it comes to money. So if you have guilt coming up, I would say, if you can, write down what that guilt is. Write down all the past experiences, list them out, and forgive yourself for it. Kind of have, in whatever form that looks like for you, have a forgiveness ritual. Like, I'm a big believer in burning things. I love just the feeling. So, like, I would say whatever guilt is coming up from the past experiences that this person was talking about, write it all out and then read it over. Understand that you did the best that you could at that time in that experience, and it's now in the past. And then burn that piece of paper, knowing, and leave it in the past, and give yourself permission to start over new. And also that you're going to make mistakes along the way, and that there isn't this perfect. But learning how to go through that process quicker of forgiving yourself for making mistakes is what's going to allow you to then not carry the past into the present and just leave it where it needs to be. I mean, if you're not making mistakes, that means you're not growing. That means you went for it. And that's my big thing, and where I love celebrating mistakes and failure, because that means you actually went for it. If you're not staying stuck and being afraid, like, that's not meant to be not meant to be celebrated, but the mistake means that you went for it. And that's an amazing thing. So also just flipping that, if there's some stuff around that, it means you did something, and it's okay if you made a mistake. So forgiveness is the huge one on that, along with shame.
Yeah, I would add a little bit to that, and I would say when on Nicola Humber's live, so not the lesson but the actual live,
Okay.
We talked about guilt and shame.
Mm.
And so I would say, for anyone that's feeling that, go back and watch that live, because we talked about how guilt and shame are often connected to things that don't belong to us. So yes, forgiveness is part of it, but also so often they're connected to us carrying beliefs that aren't our own. So often guilt is that we're carrying a belief that isn't our own. And if it's connected to shame, often that's other people's judgments that we've taken on as truths when they're not. So go and watch that live, because there might be some great keys for you within it. The other thing that I would say around guilt and shame is, one of the things that comes up with my clients a lot around guilt and shame is connected to being a woman specifically. And I don't know if you come across this with your clients, Tonia, but it's around the fact that they are setting themselves limitations around not outshining men, not earning more than men or their partners, or not overstepping their place in the world on some level. And what comes up so often, time and time again, is a set of phrases that I hear over and over again. And I know I've been reading a great book at the moment called Pull Back Your Power by Anne Whitehouse. She goes into this in a lot of detail. So I would definitely recommend reading that book as well, because I know for me, I was really unaware of how much feminine stereotypes of the past were actually still in my subconscious and in my energy field.
Yep.
And to the extent that, this was showing up in my marriage when I was married, it was showing up as when I wanted to start a business, I procrastinated for years because I just felt like there was this invisible barrier. I didn't know what it was. And I didn't know why I couldn't quite get my feet under the table in the way that I wanted to, is the best way I can describe it.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. And that's again, the other thing when it comes to emotions. There's always something there for us to reclaim. I feel like our emotions are gifts that are showing us that there's something inside of us, that there's a block that wants to reveal, so that we can now have that freedom back, because there's something that we're holding on to. Another tool that I use, that usually this is in the freedom stage, and it's part of what we're going to talk about today too, is like, what's next, is that emotions start to come up around money. Once you clean up and get clear around your I don't know, the emotions now have a playground to play, because the I don't know is gone. So they kind of come in and fill in that space. And so I use a sheet. It's from the book Money is My Friend by Phil Lout, which I think is amazing. And he has a chart on emotions, and it's specifically what they pertain to when it comes to money. And so I just pulled it up while we were talking. And for guilt and shame, what he defines it as it's fear of punishment, usually resulting in self-punishment before someone else can do it. So it's sort of like what you were saying. There is this expectation that we have out in the world, but really we're going to do it to ourselves before someone else can do it. And so bringing in self-forgiveness too of, okay, and whatever it is, we just have around that. But I know when I read the definitions, it made it a lot easier for me to move through that emotion as well, because I was able to identify like, oh, guilt and shame is coming up. What is it that, what's behind the guilt and the shame as well, and or the story behind it, so that you could just then reclaim it for yourself and then rewrite it again and put it in a way that is now empowering to you versus you being a victim of it.
So can you just repeat the name of that book? It's Money is My Friend by
Phil, and the
Phil.
last name is Laut. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but it's Laut.
Awesome. So we
Yeah.
can share that in the group as well, because I know many of the members have asked us to share books previously.
Oh, it's a great one.
And you have your own book, right?
I do.
Tell us about your book.
Okay, so my book is called The New Commodities, and it is talking about the new way forward with money. I know, like, the commodities of the world is like oil and, all the natural resources. And I am putting a book out to tell people that the new commodities are really people, connection, time, love, all the things that are free are what is really valued, but money kind of puts this stigma on putting the importance on things. And so it is talking about my journey of money and educating and giving people the financial literacy and everything that I teach. So my money methodology is in the book, along with my worksheets, and everything I teach, I'm just putting in a book to give to everyone to kind of now take control back over their finances, and talking about the emotions that are around it, and sharing my experience before I started my business of my trials. Like, I shared about my mortgage and my foreclosure, and I had a car accident, and just all the journey, my journey had led me to me figuring this out and sharing it with everyone. And at the end, I have like these blog posts that I write for people to hear my raw journal entries of me just cursing money out, not getting it right. And that I still have these conversations of like, oh my God, here it is. And just really, I kind of like burying my soul when it comes to money, but then also teaching and giving people the tools so that they could start transforming their relationship to money.
So how has your relationship with money transformed in writing that book? Has it given you, like, because I know everyone that writes a book says like they learn from writing the book.
It was incredible, because as I was writing out my methodology, I was going through each of the stages. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me that I am going through my stages again, and that there's more to learn. And more than anything, it was the freedom stage of really the freedom of self-expression, of allowing myself to speak on a topic and giving myself permission to go forward in what we talked about, like the patriarch when it comes to money, like men in the world. And I don't have a PhD or in money or in accounting or any of that. This is just my experience with it and my organizational skills, and talking about money in a totally different light of love and everything else. It was going through that freedom part of giving myself permission that I can speak on that, and that I am my own authority, my life experience, and having that in my book. I was like, oh my God, like, yeah, all this is experience. Like, this is my own school of doing this. And yeah, I am the perfect person to write this book. And then going into the stage of flow and really being, money supports me in my life, and I don't need a certain income. I have to take action first, and then the income comes afterwards, because that's where I really am now. Even though I still have my money dates and and I know all my numbers, really what was happening was me learning how to step into the next phase, and then the money comes in. So it was really about walking in blind faith and just leaping. And I remember we spoke about that, and I forgot who shared the quote, but oh, is it leaping without looking back, I think was what.
Oh yeah, it was Maria who did that. I can't quite remember the quote off the top of my head, but it was it look before you leap, or I know
Or not. I think it was leap without
opposite.
looking back. I think it was the opposite. And
Yeah.
usually the saying that I would follow was leap, and then the net comes after. So it's the same thing. Like, you have to leap, but then you will be supported. And so I feel like writing my book, there was so much of that in the context of money. And it was like, okay, here we go. And like the word conviction was coming up a lot, and real authenticity of sharing and expression. So yeah, it was interesting. It was very interesting and revealing.
You know, I love that you share this, and I love that all of the teachers who've been taking part in this group have all been through this. Maria says, by the way, leap before you look instead of look before you leap. Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
But what I love is the teachers of all, and the coaches and the authors, everybody has been through this process of realizing that almost like they've got to anchor into themselves more, right? They've got to anchor into their own expression more.
Yep.
And the biggest thing that, you know, in nearly everybody's join up to the Facebook group, where you, if they've typed in, you know, we had a couple of questions just saying, you know, why have you joined the group? What's your big challenge right now?
Mm-hmm.
And this comes up time and time again, that we give ourselves so many reasons to not do things. You know, some of it is old conditioning. Some of it is actually our choice a lot of the time. Some of it is fear.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many, many different reasons. And sometimes we can chase so many different modalities in order to avoid actually facing it as well. We just move from one to another, right?
Yep.
And I really like this phrase that you've used of take action first and then the money comes in. Can you expand on that a bit more for us?
Yes. So once, you know, you have your money, and this is really of the flow stage. So this is stage 4. So there's, you know, a couple of little steps that have to go in, which is, I think once you give yourself permission and the courage to look at your finances and no longer avoid them, there's things that get claimed back. So like once we know the I don't know, and we start dealing with the emotions, and we allow and give ourselves permission to allow our emotions to reveal to us what's been holding us back, then we could get into the flow of things. And it's like, that's where true freedom comes, when we are no longer afraid of our emotions and we're actually now teaming up with them. It's actually what allows us to be free of fear, because we allow fear to also teach us instead of being afraid of it and avoiding it. And now that has us being in a place where everything is just conspiring for our dreams to come true, because we're in a place of total acceptance. So whatever comes, mistakes, good, and everything else supports us. And so what I realize is, you know, if I want that apartment, it's not about the dollar amount. And this is really hard for me to say because I'm all about the numbers and knowing what your numbers are. And that's why it's the first thing to do, is that we do have responsibility around that. But now this is about the power of the mind and dreaming, and also realizing it's our emotions that really start to create and manifest. And so it's about the feeling behind something. So if you want to have an apartment, or there's something that you want to go for, anchor into, what does that feel like? What do you want? What are the things that light you up about it? What, you know, turns you on about it? What has you passionate about it? And then going into those steps. And then before you know it, you know, a check comes in the mail from, you know, I've had that happen. 2 years ago, I was going to India on a trip. And I was like, all right, I would like money for my airline ticket. I'm going to, you know, book it, know that I'm going to pay it off. I also had a plan of how to pay it off. And my house in Pennsylvania, which I foreclosed on how many years ago, all of a sudden a check, a letter came in from a lawyer saying that there was money from my house in an escrow account from my homeowner's insurance. It just came out of nowhere. It was just about the same amount of money for my plane ticket to India. And so those are the things that I'm speaking about is, yes, we have salaries in different ways, but I think when we allow ourselves to be open to other possibilities that we can't even see, money starts to come in different ways. But we first have to take that action in knowing, like, it's not you get the money first and then it happens. You have to trust that it's going to be provided for and then it happens.
Absolutely. I mean, this is the paradox, right? I remember very specifically, and you know, there's this interesting statistic in the UK that's been done for anyone that's socially mobile. So if you've come from quite a poor background, or a deprived background, or a background where you have a set of disadvantages that are unearned for some reason, whether that's due to ethnicity, race, financial situation, parental divorce, all these sorts of things. One of the things that's really interesting when I've done research into the statistics is that there is a high prevalence of people from those backgrounds who prioritize money over joy. So this is the pattern. It's drilled into people from these backgrounds, the importance of money. And having been one of these statistics myself, I'd followed the pattern, followed what everyone said is the thing to be done around money, how you keep yourself secure and safe in life. And then I knew I wasn't happy. I knew I had to change it. And what happened for me in that process is I leapt before I knew where I was going to go. I left engineering having no idea what I was going to do instead, but I knew in my soul, in my heart, in my body, I just knew I had to get out of that toxic environment, because I was never going to be able to see differently, look through a different lens while I was surrounded by this what felt like treacle. And a few months later, I had this vision of, wow, it's so clear what I need to do. It's along the teaching and coaching line. I didn't know what I was going to teach and coach, but I knew that's what I needed to learn next. I knew that was the next step on my journey. And I just had faith that if I started to walk that path, that the new ideas would flow, that I would figure out whatever it is that I'm supposed to be here to teach, right? And I remember having this day when I was so frustrated, and I literally was like, almost like, whether you believe in God or the universe or a source, whatever it is, I was just like, oh, you've given me this vision, but now I'm stuck in this material world. And so much of what gets spoken about around abundance and the law of attraction is almost like, imagine anything you want and then you can just have it. And it's not like that. There is this paradox of, you have to find the balance between the day-to-day practical material needs, and I say needs very specifically, not the wants, not the, oh, I'd love to have a yacht or a fancy house. And you have to balance that with the spiritual, because until you, and when I say spiritual, I don't mean that in a religious way. I mean it in a very grounded way of what you need to feel fulfilled, what you need to feel your life has meaning to it, what you need in order to feel like this isn't a waste of time, like this isn't lacking in purpose and direction. And it's a massive leap to you've got to have faith in a way that you're going to figure it out. And it starts with, what do I need right now? And this is one of the things that when people do visioning work, one of the things I notice is so many people struggle with it because it's in the future, right? And they feel like they're being asked to predict the future and then make it happen, which is not the way things happen in nature. It's much more chaotic, and there's just, that's what comes when you talk about that story.
But that's exactly it. That's why, again, when I teach this, and I had to actually start writing things down, because I had so many things come through when you were just talking about. That's why when I teach this about money, I call it a methodology, and why they're stages, because each one brings us to the next piece. And like what you were saying and what you and I were talking about with what to do today, it's about like, what's next after we write this story. And this is what's next. It's about writing this narrative. So now, just like you said, we could start attracting what it is. And it's giving yourself permission to prioritize the joy over money. And it's flipping that narrative that we are no longer living in the money pain of what money brings, but we are now celebrating money and seeing what it can bring. And that starts to attract it in and starts to bring it in. And so that's why it's so important, and why this is the first thing I do when when I work with people, is like, you got to change the money story. Because if you're just going to stay in the negative, you're just going to get more evidence of the negative stories and the negative people around money. We want to be around people who are positive and showing you and giving you evidence that, right, when you leap, that's when the real joy comes in. And when you prioritize your joy, that's when the money comes in. But that's a very hard thing to be around. So changing your environment so that you have more people who are in that abundant mentality and mindset is super important to do to support you. And this is what I have in the fun stage, and what I have written down in my book is, yeah, it's fun, but it's fun because community is huge, and having people like-minded. I know we spoke about this too, and you mentioned this on Monday, like, who do you go for advice? Is it someone who's living in the negativity of life or in the positive view of life? Is going to really influence whether you do something, because when we go for our dreams, we're in such a vulnerable state. So having the right community around us, and also with what you said about your story of when you quit your job, that's another thing that I write down in the fun stage. That's like another point is, I say it's called follow your curiosity, because that's where you start to follow your joy and the things that, and it's a game I play because I love turning things into a game when it's, something difficult. Say follow the breadcrumbs. So it's, getting the job, and then you're like, okay, there's a breadcrumb. And then little by little, the universe gives you another breadcrumb. And then there's another breadcrumb. And before you know it, you have a loaf, and you're really enjoying things. And so it's about really, when we say the balance, that's the whole point. That's why I say it's the practical and the intuitive side. It's listening and being really still to listen to and see where the breadcrumbs on, and receiving those signs. Because if we're so busy moving, because we're in a place of desperation and trying to control, we actually miss the support that's trying to be given to us, because we're just in a panic mode and operating out of desperation. And that's, what I had mentioned on Monday, like that's the difference between scarcity and abundance. Like when we see all that exists, all of a sudden there's this, oh, I'm being supported. And a book that's great for this is Florence Shin, and it's called The Game of Life. And it's a short little book, and she has amazing stories of people who have leapt, and specifically with money, and how if you just hold certain affirmations, and if you really believe it internally and in your body, that they'll come your way. And so it's a great little book to kind of just help and support that mindset, and just, give a little evidence that like it does happen and it does work.
You just said something really important, and I'm just going to pick it out a little bit, which was you have to believe it. So one of the things that I see people do is they give themselves these affirmations that they don't really believe, and they hope if they just say it enough, all of a sudden they'll start to believe it and embody it, right? And it's a bit like, I had this, I think it's Sadhguru who says this. He says, if you were to just experience the whole universe in one go, all of your circuits would just fry. You can't take the power load. You've got to learn to like build up your ability to cope with that bigger and bigger power load. And it's the same with money. It's the same with going up the ranks at work. It's the same in terms of the level of impact you have with what you do. It's really important that you actually stay with where you're comfortable, so that you don't burn out, so that you don't push it too far, because I see people do that as well. I see people go super fast, have all this success, and then burn out. Yep. And then crash. And you see this with celebrities a lot. You see it with people who win the lottery. And meanwhile, the rest of us who are trying to figure this stuff out are punishing ourselves and giving ourselves a hard time because we're not running fast enough, Yep. So there's nothing wrong with a steady pace. You don't have to figure it all out overnight. And so, yeah, thanks for that. It's really, I just think there's so many little nuggets in what you say. I'm just trying to pick them all out.
Please do. Yeah, because I forget what I say once I speak. I'm like, I'm not sure if I remember what I just said. But I have learned, like you just pointing that out is so huge, because I was one of those people, I always relate to the story of the tortoise and the hare. And I was always there. Get there as soon as possible, as quick as possible. If there was a shortcut, I wanted it. And there is no such thing. This is part of what my book taught me, was the importance of baby steps, and how it's actually the little things that are the most important, and the little wins, and just working on it a half hour every day. And even though it's not this big, ta-da, here's the book, that's actually the stuff. And it takes time to do things and to make a real change, and you can't force the timing of it, and it's going to happen the way that it's meant to happen. And like the real power is in being the tortoise, because you don't get burnt out. And a lot of what I talk about, and it's part of the flow stage, is flow is about you utilizing yourself as the tool and really learning what makes you happy and knowing that you're the one who creates your happiness. And one of the things that I talk about is self-care, and that you have to take care of yourself in order for you to be in an abundant mindset, because it's about operating from a place of overflow. And if everyone was just operating from a place of overflow and putting themselves first, the world wouldn't be the way that it is right now. People wouldn't be walking around in pain and being triggered by others, because we would have done the work. And so we would be fulfilled. And I think that that's just a huge thing, but that comes with us taking the time. And then that's also what makes your self-worth go up, is that you start to believe in yourself, because you're starting to reclaim everything. And when you come from that place, now everyone's just experiencing you. They're getting the overflow from your cup. They're not taking from you. They're not stealing from you. You're just like, please take it, because I have too much. And it's such a different place to operate. I mean, it is operating from a place of love and true abundance.
Yeah, and I think what I'm reminded of is I use this phrase, are you in the survival mind or the thriving mind? Survival,
Yes.
thrive, survival, thrive. And so
Yep.
often, and particularly with the pandemic across the world, one of the things that I notice when I'm talking to friends and clients is how toxic their workplaces have become, because everybody is gone into a state of fear. Everyone is worried about their jobs. People are doing really weird things, having very,
Yes.
the smallest conversation that normally would be no bother, people are taking to heart and being like, oh my gosh, is this getting political? What's going on here? And as soon as your mind slips into that place, it's really difficult to then get yourself out of it. It's really tricky to actually make the right choices when you're coming from a place of fear rather than love. So there's two things that you've said today, Tonia, that I was going, yep, they were two pivotal moments in my journey. One of them was making the leap. Make the leap, even if you don't know where you're going. If you feel if every cell in your body is calling you in that direction, listen. And I say
Yes.
in your body because it's your brain that will talk you out of it, not your body.
Exactly. Yep.
The second thing that you've said that I think is brilliant is follow the joy or the bliss. I mean, I remember making a commitment that I was like, I'm at this point where I don't even care if I don't have much money. I just need to be happier. I need to have more joy in my life. I need to follow the fun. And as I developed myself, that became a bigger story for me, a bigger key piece around, am I acting in my decision right now? Am I taking this decision from a place of fear or from a place of love? And whenever I'm stuck, because we're all split, we all have these things that pull us in different directions, our heart and our material life and the beliefs and everything else that makes us who we are, that we've learned. But whenever I'm confused about which bit's the real me, because we all go through that,
Yep.
I always come back to this question of, am I making this decision from a place of fear or from a place of love? And the only thing that experience has taught me, and this is absolutely experience, I don't know if it's documented or scientific or anything like that, but quite frankly, I don't care because it works for me.
Exactly.
Is this idea of, what I know is when I follow the love, when I make decisions from a place of love and trust and security and knowing that I'm going to be okay, then I wouldn't say everything works out the way I want it. Absolutely not. But I get led to the place where I need to be. Okay.
Yes.
Whereas when you act from a place of fear, what you create is a resistance to the place you need to be. How many people need to change jobs and they don't, and redundancy moves them forward. And then years later they say, and this is really common, I hear this from so many people who've been made redundant, and they say, it was literally the best thing that ever happened to me because I wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Breadcrumb. So sometimes we view life's problems, but it's really the universe supporting us, because they knew that we weren't going to do it. So they're like, here's your push. And I think that when we start to really come from love, we realize, oh my God, that was a gift. And sometimes we don't see it in the moment, but that's like, that reframe is huge. And realizing, like, even in things, pain is such a great motivator to do things. And an acronym, pay attention inward now. So pain is just showing us that there's something for us to see, or that there's a message there. And so, like you said, sometimes we're not going to do it. The universe knows our vision and our dream, and it's going to give us a little push because we wouldn't have did it on our own. But it's the greatest gift, but it could be so, so painful. And I think that that's another huge thing when we choose to resist leaping. If we put out there what we want, we're still going to be pushed in that direction. But we could either go kicking or screaming, or we could go in excitement and looking at it as an adventure. And that's where we can control life. Like, we get to choose the experience we want to have around it. So we're going to get there. It's either going to be really painful, or you could turn it into some pleasurable adventure. And like a roller coaster, when you go up, you're scared, there's anticipation. And when that drops, you're screaming, but you're having fun. Versus, if you stay in fear, the whole experience gets tainted. So yeah, being in love and following your joy, it just makes it, why not have fun? That's always my thing. Like, just why not have fun?
And I just want to say something as well, because as much as I'm into learning from all different sources, not just scientific, not just spiritual, I like to mix it up. And I know when I first started hearing people talk like this, I would be like, oh yeah, sure, whatever, And what I've realized over time is that, and I just want to point this out for anyone that's having that experience, is that this is the nature of the universe. When you look to other places, when you think about the nature of evolution, the whole system is there to evolve us in the direction we need to go. Monkeys didn't evolve because some other, an amoeba decided it was going to become a monkey. It was a step-by-step gradual process, if you follow that theory and believe in that, and even if you are very religious and you maybe don't believe in Darwinism and that sort of stuff, maybe that you don't believe in the Big Bang even, what I would say is the whole story of Jesus, if you're Christian, which many people in the West are, it's all about his evolvement. It's all about how he all of the symbology of Jesus, particularly if you go to Catholic churches, you'll see it's all statues of Jesus. And what he's got is he's got the thorns around his head, and he's got his heart open, and he's pointing to it. Now, this is the simplest way that I can sum up some of this religious stuff. I'm not particularly religious myself, but I have read a lot of different books, from the Bhagavad Gita to the Bible, in a lot of detail, more than a lot of people, right? And this story is all about how you've got to get out of your head, because it's like having thorns up there. And you've got to start following your heart, have an open heart, follow the heart, And part of that story, Jesus says, I don't know where this sermon is coming from, but it's coming out, so I'm going with it. He says, Father, why have you forsaken me? And it's about the fact that we all go through this realization that our parents have failed us. Why have you failed us? Why have you taught me this stuff? To varying degrees, depending on what happened in your life. You get over your trauma stuff in childhood, and then you get hit by your own limits and all the things you've collected from the universe, you've chosen to hold on to and attach to. So there's many routes in, but ultimately all of these tools that you're learning, all of these different teachers, they're all taking you on this process of evolution to evolve yourself. And it might be for you that your route is through money. It might be for me, like it was, through work. For other people, it might be through writing a book. For some, it might be through their business, or simply through just exploring themselves and being a mother or a parent. And as well, whatever the challenge is that has been your life, whatever the story is, the thing to remember is never see the negative things and the shameful things as just applicable to you. What we don't do as humans is talk and share about them enough, because as soon as you do, I cannot tell you how much relief comes when you meet that other person and you're like, oh my gosh, it's not just me. And money is a big area for this, right?
It's a huge, it's why I love talking about this topic, because people are like, oh, it's money. I'm like, I love money, yes, but the reason why I chose this platform is because I love connecting people to their joy. And money is one of the main things that rob people of their joy. And this is why I do money. And it's not so much about the money, it's about teaching people to use it as the tool so that you could get that joy back and not allow it to rob that experience. And something to just that I want to just tell to everyone who's watching, and that you had said too, is especially when it comes to money, with everything that is going on right now, like there's a lot of fear that's out there, and it's true. But the same amount of money still exists out in the world that was there before, if you look at like the cumulative amount. So it's just a matter of, if you stay in the pool of fear, you're going to just have more of the experience of the scarcity of it. Whereas if you move into like, okay, there's still that money and it exists, so what experiences do I need to do in order for that money to come and come from a place of joy, is what's going to allow that to come in. And when we start to have fun with it. And one of the things that I know I would not be where I am in my doing my work is something I call a journey partner. And so when you know that you're in a place of fear and you can't get out of it, phone a friend who you know is similar to you in your beliefs and is going to anchor into that positivity. I mean, we do not have to go through this journey alone. Holly, you just said it with like, when you speak to someone else, it gives you permission, that connection, that human connection, and that sharing and that vulnerability holds so much power. And we could learn. And sometimes that person has the aha, we didn't know. They say something, we're like, oh my God, that's what it is. And then all of a sudden, the thing that we we're holding on to is gone. So if anything, at the like, find a journey partner, someone who you know is gonna anchor you when you're in a place of fear, because it's going to come up. Like, look what happens. You can't escape it. That's the way that it is. But the whole point is to start putting in tools and rituals and structures so that you keep yourself anchored in. I say, like, my number one job when I wake up in the morning is to stay in a place of joy. And I do that with my morning rituals and everything else. I don't wake up happy. I wake up, I'm like, I want to go back to bed. Like, I don't want to do this today. But then I have certain structures that I put in place so that I stayed anchored in that. It's something to do. It's a, I don't want to call it a job to do, but I've made a conscious decision to stay anchored in that. But it takes something from me in order to do that. And that is my priority. And that's actually what has me then attract money in, because I am putting myself first and my happiness first. And then everything else kind of just flows from that.
Yeah, I mean, you said a couple of things there that are really, really important. One is vulnerability, this word. This has come up time and time again in this group, where people have, they've said it feels scary to be vulnerable, right? It's not something we're naturally doing in society.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the great powers of a group like this, that it's a space where you can come and bring that vulnerability and no one's going to judge. And 9 times out of 10 there's at least another 3 people in the room, on the call, on the course, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, who are feeling the same and just didn't have the courage to say it. And most of the time when someone is vulnerable, even if people don't agree, everybody protects that person, because there's a group dynamic, a sense that this person is vulnerable, and just back off a little bit, we'll take care of them.
Yeah, exactly.
The second thing you said was this morning ritual, and you've mentioned it the other day, you've talked about it a few times today, and this is something I really subscribe to as well. Like, set that time when you're going to get up, and what's the first thing you do in the day. I learned a great technique a while back, which was around goal setting. I was never really into goal setting, I've got to be honest. I was always kind of like, no, be more intuitive and all that sort of stuff. But I also knew its value and that it has a place.
Yep.
And so this little tip that I learned was basically create small goals for yourself. So the first thing I do in the morning is I get up and I have my shower, I get dressed, get out of bed. Some people use the countdown method, but just get out, get up, as soon as you can. You'll feel so much better for it. And then the first thing I do is I sit down and I write my goals for the day. 5 small goals, and they can be as small as I'm putting the washing on today while I'm doing, before I do a call with a client, or I, will tidy some of my books away. I always have books all over my office. My partner's like, you're so clean and tidy, but in your office it's just layers of paper and books. I'm like, well, it's my creative space, you know. But he is right. And so I make an effort to not tidy it all, but to just keep on top. Do, you know, 30 seconds, the 30-second ritual of do something small and do it while you can. And these little goals is a great setup for the day. And it gives you total freedom to choose rather than to follow someone else's ritual.
Yes. And I think if, you know, for anyone who doesn't have a ritual and they might be intimidated, because you could hear like my ritual could take long, but I've built on this from all of my years. But when I first just got started, like the whole thing is just do one, just, it doesn't even matter what you do. Choose yourself first thing in the morning. Because Holly, I agree with you. Like goal setting, I actually do write down like 3 or 4 things that I want to accomplish that day. But I'm sitting down and journaling and they'll kind of just drop in like, oh, I need to do that. And I'll just drop it in. But more than anything, I think is just setting the intention of like, what do you want to create today? And my whole thing is like setting the intention that whatever I do is going to come from a place of joy and love and just anchoring into that. And then everything else kind of just flows. But for everyone to find something authentically, right? What works for you, Holly, might not work for me. What I'm saying might not work for someone else. So give yourself permission to explore with different modalities and allow your curiosity to show you the things you might be interested in. Like Holly might have said something, you're like, oh, I might be interested in that. Try it out. And if it doesn't work, let it go. And don't make up anything about it. You're not lazy. You're not spiritual. You're not nothing. It's just not resonating with you. And then allow your curiosity to show you something else. So just give yourself permission to play with life and you will be surprised with the things that you learn. And just choose yourself first in the morning and you'll build on that. Because that's also what's with staying in a place of overflow and in an abundance and just creating your own happiness.
And I would say one of the big lessons that I actually got from making that part of my ritual was that one of the things I learned was sometimes I was setting my goals from a place of pure logic and not from the heart, not from a place of love, right? It wasn't necessarily from a place of fear either, but it was just, I was in my head so much of the time. And I started to realize when I had days when I was feeling like, you know, like what my 5 things need to be today are, I need to go for a walk. I want to just like wash my hair and have a girly day. And I want to read a book. And I know I've got work to do, but that's how I feel, you know. And what I've learned over time, and this is the great power of having these morning rituals, is I've discovered, oh, hang on, I actually need to listen to that when I feel that way, because when I don't, I get myself all burned out, all tied up in knots, and then I don't have the energy to do the work that I needed to do anyway, and it doesn't get done. So I could have had fun.
Exactly. Yep. It is coming from, and that's why I love calling it the head place. Like I find it, that's me trying to control because I'm not in a place of faith. And that's what I think it is, regardless. I know we're talking about the universe and spirituality and whatever religion you follow, we all know what faith is. And so it's just really, you know, this is the universal faith, higher power, love, you know, and if you just come from those places, everything kind of just flows. Whereas, like you said, you resist it, you realize like, it takes a lot longer and you could have had a really pleasant day because those things aren't working because you weren't meant to do them. And so it's the world trying to be like, stop doing it. Like your computer's not working because it's not working. It's because we don't want you to work on this right now. Go for a walk. And if we start to see those things as signs that are trying to help us versus stop us, life becomes quite easy and pleasant.
Absolutely. Very wise words from Tonia there. I've got a few things down that I'm actually going to put into some little social media posts from what you've said tonight. There's so many gems in there. So I've got the little PAIN acronym you did. Pay attention inward now when you feel pain. Take action first and then the money comes. And also the books that you shared. So you've got the Money is My Friend by Phil Lout, and the New Commodities is your book.
That's my book.
Actually, we've got a few questions saying, where can we get your book from? So we'll come on to that in a minute. And then Florence Shine, was it The Game of Life? Not
The Game of Life. Yeah.
Can't read my own writing.
Yep, you're fine.
Game of Life.
Game of Life.
So where can people get your book? Where should they go? How can they follow you? How can they learn more from you?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they could go onto my website, www.toniag.com, and sign up for my newsletter. I'll always have updates. My book is in production. I'm just in the final stages of the edits, so it's still not out yet. But once it is, I'll have a link where people could register for the book. So again, if you sign up to my newsletter, there'll always be information as to when we could do that. You could also follow me on Facebook, because I do videos on there. And so it's just Tonia Gajuso. I think I'm on the Facebook group, so you could friend request me. And yeah, I say the newsletter is the greatest place to do that. And for anyone who wants to have a conversation, I offer, free 20-minute discovery calls. If you have stuff that's coming up around money that you want to just talk, go for it. I love just, bringing new perspective around it. So those are ways that you can get in touch with me.
And the other thing that I would say is, take Tonia up on this offer of the free 20-minute talk, right? Not because she's going to sell to you or wants to get you into her products. If you're ready, that will happen naturally. And everyone that's working in this group knows that and comes from that place. So it's really a genuine offer of, 20 minutes doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking to someone who's walked the walk, they've not just learned from a textbook or followed all the rules, someone who's actually made mistakes and had to dig themselves out of it, they're the people who can really help. And 20 minutes with someone like that can literally save you thousands of pounds. Just one little comment sometimes. I've had that happen to me. Someone has said this one little gem to me. I've been like, oh my gosh, that's paid back tenfold.
Yes.
So, and the other thing that someone said to me in the last week was that they don't believe in coaching. And I was like, okay, fair enough,
Mm-hmm.
But the way I when we dug into it and we had this conversation, they talked about, if they wanted to get fit and go to the gym, well, they'd hire a personal trainer. They know a personal trainer would do that well. No matter what it is in life, it may not be something physical. It might be something more intangible, like the way that you think about money, the way that you work with money, the way you think about your career, what you want, what your aspirations and your goals are. That's the job of a coach. They've been there, they've done it, and they have the vulnerable conversations. And they've not only done their own journey, but in their training and in their work, they've learned from thousands and thousands of other people and people who've gone through it before them on their journey. So take her up on that offer. Don't be afraid. You're completely within your rights to say, hey, thanks for that, but that's it for me. There's no obligation. And I think that obligation so often puts people off getting in touch for a free consultation. And go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and it's great because I had this too. I never liked you doing that because people would sell to me, but it was also it is because I didn't know to stand in my power of saying no. Also, the other thing is, like, when I talk to people, I actually won't even sell to you because I don't want to work with anyone who's not ready to work. So, like, I don't believe in the old methods of selling off of pain and taking someone's vulnerability and then using that to get them in. I know that's a very old school way of doing it. If someone's not ready, I actually don't want to work with them because I'm like, I don't want to be an adult trying to drag a kid along. Like, I want people who know that they're ready. And I respect people who fully say I am not and know what it is that they want. So I'm genuinely saying, for anyone who is finding that there's like that the curiosity is piqued and want to have a conversation, go for it. And if not, awesome. Even better. I just want you to know what's open and available to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Tonia. It's been an absolutely amazing week. Like, I've totally loved it. I think in your work, you talk about money, but I've learned so much about life from some of the things that you said.
Yeah.
It transcends the dimension you're working in.
Yeah.
And if anybody does have any other questions, I know not everybody can join live, do feel free to contact me, holly@evolving.careers, and ask your questions. I can always forward them on to Tonia, or you can contact her directly. She's tagged in quite a few of the posts in the group. And so all that's left to say is another massive thank you to Tonia. Go check out her book, go check out her website, toniag.com. And also next week, be here, same time, same place, because we have the marvelous Maria Coulter, who is she is the construction coach, but she's also a life coach. That was her training. But she specializes in construction, and that's where we met, actually. We did a brilliant training course together called about ethics in construction, and she is here next week to talk to us about, we've been learning all of this wonderful stuff. How are we going to put it into action? And what is the one thing that you need to do in order to move yourself forward from wherever you are with whatever you've got going on right now? So we're going to get a bit more grounded next week. We're going to try and pull in all of this brilliant wisdom that you've been doing. You can go off and explore all of these tools with each of the teachers. If you want to find any of their links, you can go to my website, evolving.careers. If you click on Join the Work Experience, all of the teachers' profiles are on that next page, and you can read all about them. You can join all their social things, whatever your favorite places, whether it's Insta or Facebook. And I do have an extra little surprise, which is that we are going to be doing a couple of extra lessons in the work experience. So our initial intention was for 8 weeks, but we have another 3 teachers lined up who are just going to cap it off a little bit more. And what we will be doing next week is putting out a survey to all of you. So if you are enjoying this, if you're hating it, if we're not meeting your needs, if we are meeting your needs, we want to know about it. So we'd be super grateful if you can fill that out when I share it in the group, so that we can learn more about what you need and want from us, and where we take the group going forward after the next couple of weeks and the summer. So thanks again for your time, Tonia. Thanks for listening, everyone, and for your lovely questions. We've had some lovely feedback, Tonia. Someone says they've got a call booked for Monday. Someone else says, thank you for an inspiring and encouraging reframe. So
you're so welcome.
It's always good to hear from the audience when things are touching you and you and resonating. So take care, guys, and enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you on Monday.
Bye everyone.